what I want to talk about, or at least one of the things that I think is important, and it's pretty much the foundation for anything I've ever achieved, whether I realize it at the time or not, but it all stems with the idea of belief, and that's how this gentleman, Gordon Graham, it's an important part, I guess, of the mindset that I have in terms of belief, because some of the stories that I was able to hear him tell. I had a sales manager who I was riding with one day, and he gave me a CD, and it had a Gordon Graham speech that was just amazing. And one of the things he talks about is a story about a gentleman that set a world record at the time, and that person challenged belief and people's belief, and not only that, but the reason that individual was able to do an incredible thing was because his belief was just a little bit different than everybody else at that time. And this happened, I think, in 1983. But there was a huge race at the Westfield Galleria, which was a mall, and they wanted a lot of publicity, so they had this huge event, and there was a gentleman by the name of Cliff Young that heard about this race. It was an ultra marathon. He wanted to run. He'd been a runner his whole life. His job on the small farm station that he grew up on, which is a little farm out in the middle of nowhere in Australia, was to chase down the animal by feet. So he'd been running his whole life. That's just what he did. It was in him. But he grew up in the middle of nowhere. They had no TV, they had no radio, so he just never knew where a race was, and he lived in the middle of nowhere, so it just wasn't accessible. But he heard about this race. It happened to be a huge race, and he showed up in galoshes and overalls. And so for people who don't know what that is, they're like rain boots. And of course you probably know what overalls are, but obviously that's not what you're supposed to wear when you're running this ultra marathon for hundreds of miles, right? That's probably not the outfit. But for him, that's what he wore when he was chasing down the animal by feet, right? So everybody was making fun of him. They made a huge joke of it. The reporters were having a field day. They were asking him, how's he going to run this race? And he told them the same thing I just told you. You know, I grew up, I was a farmer, farm station in Australia, chased down the animals by foot my whole life. I really want to run this race, and this is what I want to do. And they wanted a story, right? And it looked pretty funny, so they let him run the race. Started off, and just as what probably you would expect happened, it's at the back of the pack, right? Dude showed up in overalls and galoshes. How's he possibly going to compete with these world-class athletes? And he didn't initially. But the race went on, and all of a sudden this dude, Cliff Young, started to do very well in the race, and he started to catch up, and he started to challenge people's beliefs, because that's what happens when things that we don't think should happen, right? Start to question them, because that's not the way things are supposed to be. Well, just gonna cut to the end of it. Cliff Young ended up winning the race. He ended up winning it by about a day and a half. And that outback farmer from Australia was over 60 years old when he accomplished this. And it was for one simple reason, and this gets back to the power of belief. At that time, in 1983, people believed that a human being could only run for 18 hours and their body could do no more. That was the limit. They needed to rest after 18 hours, and that was it. Our 60-year-old man, Cliff Young, or older than 60-year-old man from Cliff Young from the farm station that showed up in galoshes and overalls, had no TV, had no radio. He didn't know that. Cliff Young never rested. That's how he was able to beat the competition by a day and a half. But we all have that type of stuff in our life. We all have those limitations, where those beliefs that hold us back. Those runners could have ran more than 18 hours. They were a lot younger than Cliff Young. They were in a lot better shape. They had a lot better equipment. But their beliefs are what held them back, because the next year, they broke Cliff Young's record. Another crazy thing on belief. So with this book, and I know it's kind of a tangent, but I'm super cheap. But I wanted a book. I told you earlier that I loved the story and the speech this guy gave. So I looked up on Amazon books, and I found this one, and had a multitude of different ones by him, and they had some that were autographed, but they were way more expensive. And I was bummed, because like, man, I don't want to waste money, but I really want the book. I'm just going to order it, right? Sure enough, the book comes to my house. The man himself, Gordon Graham, autographed. Power of belief, my friends. Change is an inside job. Gordon Graham book. You love it. Power of belief. Just the way it is.